Well, hi. Welcome back to part 3. When we left off, I was about to take us to Ireland. And I'm going to read to you a very special poem I wrote years after I left Ireland called The Lord's Island. It's about Lambay Island. Lambay Island is a several thousand acre island, about 7 miles, I think, off the coast, just north of Dublin. Just outside a little town called Rush, County Dublin, which has a couple of very sweet beaches that I used to love to swim in or off of. So one summer when I had a little beach house there, I came to the acquaintance of this very old, toothless fisherman. His name was Thomas McGee. He was just a wonderful person. He was a lobster fisherman. So he took me on his lobster boat with his son, and we went lobster fishing that summer, and I had lobster every night to eat. And it was fabulous. And so anyway, I kept on begging him to take me to Lambay Island. So one night I convinced him, and it was under a big full moon, and we did go over in the dark all the way to Lambay Island, and we landed, I think, on the east side of the island, yes. And we made our way up, and bulls were chasing us. And anyway, make a long story short, this poem is about that adventure, about that night. Also, I met Lord Rupert Revelstoke, who was the owner of Lambay Island. He was a member of the family, the Baring-Banks family from England. And it was quite a place. I mean, he had everything there. People working for him and doing the hay. And in August, I even got to go over for a day. And I spent the day with Lord Rupert Revelstoke. He was so much fun. He had a big red face because he loved brandy. And he just would drink brandy all the time. But he was a very, very nice man and was very welcoming to me. And I think I was a bit of a curiosity to him, coming from Massachusetts. So it was really fun. He even paid me for that day. It was great. I loved it. We were taking in the hay, but I didn't really participate in the hay. Anyway, let's get to the story. Lord's Island. Lord Rupert Revelstoke lived on Lambay Island in a castle fortified by walls. From the beach in Rush, I called to the gods that some fisherman's hand would weaken, needing help. I needed to reach Lambay shore. Without praying much more, I ran Main Street down, past 12 pubs to the docks, and saw Thomas McGee, a salty old sea hawk. His rift was solid with lobsters and crabs. I begged him to sail me to Lambay's rocks. Our day trip began slitting mackerel and tying dead body to the lobster trap's eyes, which would seek out red, lazy, speckled, lazy sea monsters. When remote from the sheltered shore, having tossed pops into incorrigible currents, a heaving mass of bulbous seaweed was captured. At a loss to know what creatures we had fathomed, I struggled and towed the sea's treasure to the boat's wet bottom. I screamed at the horror the cage had unveiled. A gigantic sea snake, a scummy Caucasian conger eel. I threw up my hands. The pot crashed to the deck. McGee drawed his knife and cut off the neck of this rabid sea dog and threw the choice carcass into a pot, the final graveyard for the ocean's caught. When after draughts of spirits and poachine, our boiled feast of sea snake meat, white and lean, lusciousness of lobster fish of the underseas, I marveled that the Irish Sea had furnished me so freely, feeding and sustaining this wandering company. One night at midnight, Thomas and I made a pact to visit Lambay Island. We had to be secret. The fact of our meeting and sailing under a full moon would seem to Russia's townsfolk to be soon an engagement or a wedding. Oh, they could gossip and talk as they liked. I was a mere 22, and Thomas McGee, a handsome though wizened man, almost toothless, could never have won my hand. Our old lobster boat plowed the kelp and jellyfish, the smell of brine and salt, and those seal guards, a horde, an army protecting the Lord's mysterious shore. Our vessel veered against the strip of tan sand and scraped upon the salted strand. A muffled scream, hearing those buccaneers' landings, a mist poultry. Directly I would discern the differences between kings and commoners, between lords and peasants, that those wings of chance and birth would sear my social self-esteem, and in self-knowledge of lowly birth, despite those beams and flashes of paradisal light, I knew that I was poor, that one man could own so much, vast portions of fish and flesh and birds and land I could not understand. Thomas and I, hand in hand, whispered silently to the band of miniature horses at the first gate to the first field. They were a freak of nature or of man's breeding skills. Still, with bloodshot eyes and platinum manes, they thrilled at their wet, bedraggled invaders. A wall soon met us as high as the gulls fly, but its sides were built in steps so that any uninvited guest could climb and scale the depths within the Lord's sumptuous paradise. I thought that my heart would burst bloody within, but soon Thomas and I had made our way into a doorway, then a hall. I called to Thomas. I was deathly afraid. Thomas had the gall to steal food from the Lord's kitchen. Breads and meats, cheeses and fruits, eggs and milk, fine wines and sweets, a godlike treat. We quickly conveyed outdoors. On an archery gallery, we celebrated and barely chuckled, aware of the bursting blue moon of the tearing tide stranding us on the Lord's fortress until dawn. We hid beneath nocturnal silence, the muffled sounds of snoozing beasts, a drowsy, rare, feral ritual of nature. A fiery flame billed these buccaneers both from a dreamlit voyage, their venture ending with light, exposing these intrepid trespassers as nomadic knights in quest of a revelation so vast. Past wisdom threw up his hands and said, "There are many who have searched for truth, but none so avariciously as you." Reason then roared off the walls and into the streets that riches and poverty are governed by chance, not feats of talent, nor hard work, nor sweat, but through stable seeds of ancestry. An antithesis to my absurd American dream. We fell forward into the crusty old lobster boat, the rising tide heaving the aging ark into a tempest. We were not tossed, we were in flight, our swells coating our skin, our vestments, unearthly white. I sat nestled on the middle timber, while Thomas stood at the stern, our guide through our concluding confrontation. He turned the creaking craft through curling white caps of death and to drowning half the Irish sea's gaping mouth imagined. I remember howling and stamping my feet. I was invincible. I would will this hurricane to halt, hold its breath, while Thomas and his pirate queen were delivered from death. There were many who missed us. Talk of the town. We were met by the locals with food, beer, and frowns. We were scolded, rebuked, and reproved for our venture, a routine bourgeois response, reserved for explorers who return with no plunder, no spoils, no booty, no gifts. As a stranger, Desiring that neither quarrels nor rifts would rupture,